Hello, everyone. Phil Turek here. The scope of my Mars project, Martians on Earth, is really social activism, trying to use Mars as a tool for change to make some changes here in the social attitudes and choices, particularly within the United States, but maybe more generally in the world overall. Now, sometimes it's useful to just compare where you are to where you want to be and, tell if, how far you still have to go. So in this episode, I'm going to leap ahead steps beyond the scope of what I'm trying to do with the AIAA and just focus on one particular political challenge or issue, and that is the subject of immigration reform. So I'm going to attempt to, you know, share my view of what would be a desirable goal state and where are we or where am I today relative to achieving that goal. So that's this week's episode. All right. In the future, there will be a vibrant, self sustaining human civilization on Mars. The high road to Mars is one built on a foundation of gracious professionalism, the bedrock ethos of the first robotics competition. The earthbound dreamers of today, who are working to open the high road to a future Martian civilization, are the ancestors of tomorrow's Martians. I'm Phil Turek, one such ancestral Martian. Look at what I'm trying to do by creating simulated Martian cultural ambassadors to act as positive social influencers to somewhat depolarize society here in the United States. Imagine how much even better it would be if the United States were to bring real Martian ambassadors here. Martians on Earth, Season 2, Episode 19, Immigration Reform. Okay. All right, so I have a few slides to go along with this. Let's see. First, from this conservative article that or author I read a while back, he outlined 5 or 6 steps to go through to change the trajectory of a nation. And my involvement with the AIAA and what I'm trying to do is really just the first 3 steps, trying to do a shift in national values using Mars as a tool for this, Martians. But what I want to do today is really leap ahead to step 5 there, where it says a surge of political reform, expand the circle of power, include more voices. And wow. So it's not anything to be done with, my Martians on Earth project, but it's something that hopefully in the future enough momentum will be built to go ahead and do step 4 and do step 5 and step 6, which is beyond what I can do. All right. So what's going on? Here, early 21st century United States, we have a current leader, number 47, who had been leader number 45. Now, in between was President Biden. And during his term in office, there was a recognition that for a long time, the immigration system in the United States has been in need of reform, that people would be admitted at the border and then they'd be handed like a schedule card that says, okay, you're going to come before a judge. And how soon do you have to wait? Well, sometimes more than 10 years before you even get in front of a judge. And that's uh, impractical. So the system had been broken. And during the summer or spring of 2024, a group of the two major political parties, Republicans and Democrats, in the Senate had hammered out and negotiated an immigration reform bill. And they were touting it as, okay, at last we have something that is meaningful, and it's going to increase border security, which is always the first thing that the Republicans want to do. And it's going to open up a pathway for the dreamers to get citizenship. A dreamer is a child of a illegal immigrant who was brought here when they were very young, and this is the only country they've ever known in their uh, conscious existence. And therefore, why send them off to some foreign country that they have no idea how to survive there when they are, in essence, American citizens in everything except birth? Okay, so those are the dreamers. And if you go to congress.gov, you can dig up all kinds of information, at least currently. So I Googled and asked, what was the name of that legislation? And it's called the Senate Bill 4361 of the 118th Congress. Okay, and this is just the title of it. It was sponsored by that Democrat. It was allegedly a bipartisan bill, but when you go to the website and look it up, there's no other co-sponsors for that bill. Now, the fate of this bill, as I understand it, is that leader number 45, running to become president again, was wanting to use immigration as a running issue, meaning uh, he wanted immigration to be really screwed up so that he could make the claim that I'm going to fix it. I'm the only one who can fix it. And therefore, he prevailed upon the United States Senate to kill this bill instead of advancing it and trying to make it into law. Again, leader number 45 was thinking, well, if this actually reforms immigration, then that will be credit to President Biden, and maybe, he will be reelected because there's no crisis at the border to have as an issue for electing number 45. Now, when I look at this bill, and I can't read the legalese that goes with these bills. These are multi-pages long, written by lawyers, and unless you spend a long time trying to figure it out, uh, good luck. It's hard to understand. As I glance at the Google summary of this bill, it doesn't look all that favorable to me personally. Uh, in comparison to something else I've stumbled across, and that is this Dignity Act, as they refer to it, which was legislation originating in the House of Representatives. That's House um, HR, whatever the R is, 3599, also from the 118th Congress. This one, when I stumbled across it, has 38 co-sponsors to this bill. And that's just tremendously different from it. Also, reading the Google summary of it, which I think I can show on the next slide. Okay, so when was this? This one was a year earlier. It was in May of 2023, and it never advanced out of the House of Representatives. So HR, House of Representatives. Here's the Google summary for this particular bill. It would have granted undocumented people in the United States legal status and give them a permanently renewable legal status. So, like every 7 years or so, they would have to go through some hoops and they could renew their privilege of working in the United States without actually having a path going to citizenship. To me, there's two things about this bill that I like. Uh, One of them, the biggest one, is that it had so many co-sponsors and it was truly bipartisan in the co-sponsors. Let me show you the list. There it is. So the first column, the one that's a slightly different color from the other three, those are the Republicans who co-sponsored this legislation. And the three columns on the right Those are the Democrats that co-sponsored this legislation. So this is truly bipartisan. And that's a necessary criteria to get anything actually through Congress. And the second thing I like is that it just seems to have much more reasonable, I guess you'll call them liberal, attitudes towards what to do with the illegal aliens who are already here. They've been here for 30 years. There was, again, I try to read the news feeds and opinion pieces. So one writer was pointing out that during the Biden administration, the perception was the borders are too open, that people are just flooding in and it's overwhelming our system. And now, during the Trump administration, the borders are being enforced with cruelty and very inhumane treatment. There's an image of a abandoned cart used by a little street vendor. He was snatched off the street. A woman was snatched off the street of New York City by unidentified masked gunmen, whisked away in an unmarked car, and disappeared. And we're to believe that that was the federal government removing someone legally. And so those are both too extreme. And this legislation from 2023, to me, seems like a practical working reform to immigration. Okay. So, I've been using the American nations map to try to figure out things in context. So here it is once again, a map showing the 11 major American nations that make up the United States, and they're culturally quite different. Their social attitudes and values are quite different from each other. Sort of as an extreme, Yankeedom was all about sacrifice for the common good and social experimentation with better government. And the Deep South was all about no, democracy for the few and slavery for the masses. And there's the foundation for the Civil War in the 1800s. And there's still uh, a clash of values today in the 21st century. All right. So take a look at this map. Here are seven of the eight districts of those Republicans who co-sponsored the House Resolution 3599. And they are essentially in the far west, although close to the left coast, one in the left coast, uh, two in New Netherland, one way down in the Spanish Caribbean, which is not one of the 11 nations. And then the last one is off the map because it's Puerto Rico. Okay, so from this, what can I say? Hmm. I can say that there's, not much appearance that the Deep South is ever going to buy into this. Also, those far West Republicans are really sort of in urban type of districts, which means they tend to skew a bit towards liberal values and therefore left coast values. And so, even though they are in a far West region of the country, their political district is like a little island of liberalism, I guess. Now, what about all those Democrats? So here I've added in 29 of the 30 Democrat districts that co-sponsored House Resolution 3599. And where's the 30th, you ask? Huh, Alaska. So from Alaska to Puerto Rico, they were co-sponsors for this legislation. And I would say even in the deep south there, these tend to be districts that are little islands of liberalism, of urban islands in otherwise the American nations surrounding them more rural. All right. Now, to me, huh, here's a lesson from my past. And let me see. I forget what's my next slide. Okay. Here's a lesson from my past. 35 years ago, when I became a space activist and just popped out on the scene, one thing I learned is that as few as three people can cause legislation to become enacted into law. And how does that work? Well, three people who are constituents for a given district who work out an intelligent plan and pitch it to their congressional representative and assist in their staff drafting it up in legalese and then going out and, shaking hands. It happened. Okay. So for me personally, looking it up, who are my congressional representatives? They're all Democrats. And Dave Min, from my point of view, is sort of a new guy. When I started this 35 years ago, my local rep was Dana Rohrabacher. And he was very convenient for me. He was new at the same time I was new to space activism. He and I actually uh, got along. Okay, I took my students to his offices in Washington, D.C., and uh, his town halls were held just 4 miles from my home. This new guy, Dave Min, his offices are like 12 miles away, and he doesn't have any town halls scheduled. So I haven't met him. I'm not heading off to Washington, D.C. Anytime soon. So it'd be harder for me to work with. And then state senators, I've never tried to look up a senator anywhere in Washington or in my own state. But here's what I want to talk about. And so it goes like this. When I applied to NASA for their NEAT program, Network of Educator Astronaut Teachers, along with knowing what my work accomplishments were as a teacher, I was required because this was a, public program. Teachers might become astronauts is the intent of the program. I had to write letters of recommendation from a student evaluating me, from a parent unrelated to that student, but a parent who had had their child as one of my students, and from a neighbor. And so here's three images. One of my students on the left on the slide, one of the parents, though it's kind of hard to tell, that's one of the parents, and then one of my neighbors on the right there. And so maybe not these exact people. Two or three of them are actually. So two out of these three are the actual people who wrote letters for me. But for immigration reform, remember where it said step 5 is spread the power out more, increase the power? I would propose for immigration reform. The story goes like this. So here's the story as part of a story that once upon a time, think of two religious groups that are just always clashing with each other. Let's say Jews and Muslims. I think it was actually those two groups, and I wrote it down, and I can't find my notes anymore. But once upon a time, the government that encompassed one of those groups decided to persecute the minority that was members of that other group. And I think my memory goes, they were Muslims who were going to persecute Jews. And it was like a national policy to do it. There was a family, and what happened was their neighbors knew them and protected them from the persecution that was going on nationally in that area of the world. And the little boy asked his dad, how did that happen that we weren't persecuted? And the dad's reply was, you need to judge people individually, not as a group. That, I feel, is a key to immigration reform. If you start classifying people as groups, then you're missing individual characteristics. If we say all US presidents are good, I think we're missing out on some individual, maybe multiple individuals. If you say all, fill in the blank, any group you want to create, a subgroup of human beings, all pick a religion, all pick a nationality, all pick a ethnicity, pick a race, all, any of them. It's not. Human beings are individuals. We're a collection. And so I would propose as an idea for immigration reform to not have this blanket thing that says all people from Venezuela, for example, is a current example, should be banned from entering the United States. It should be increase the circle of power and evaluate individuals. So I would say, as part of immigration reform, if someone has been here illegally for 30 years, then a path to them remaining in the United States legally, maybe not becoming citizens, but at least remaining here legally. Why not have letters of recommendation? One from a coworker, perhaps. One from a neighbor. One from an elected local official, like a city council member. So you've got a little blending of groups that, you trust the elected local official to represent the community and not have ulterior motives going on, or at least between the three of them, two out of three are trustworthy, right? So that's my last slide. And the food for thought is, what kind of immigration reform would that be? Suppose we wanted to make that implemented. Okay, so hold that thought. I'm going to stop sharing. Boop. All right. Huh. So put these two thoughts together. Suppose my idea for immigration reform that says, okay, three letters of recommendation from the locals to enable this person to not get kicked out of the country. Or, yeah, where am I in the world of seeing that as an end state politically here in the United States? So, minimum of three people to influence legislation. And what does that mean? Here, currently in our federal government, our dear leader, uh, for reasons I've gone over in previous episodes, will uh, is just sort of always going to be behaving like a spoiled 7-year-old brat who will never actually mature and develop a functioning moral compass. It has to do with issues that I've gone over in the past. And so this is a moral compass issue, right? Cruelty is not a morally good thing to do. And our dear leader is a great storyteller, and he's really gotten like 38 million followers to enter his bubble of reality. And in that bubble, it's very simple. You just have to follow the leader and, own the libs. That's it. So follow the leader, whatever the leader says. Oh, the Epstein files are a hoax, this, that, and own the libs on every possible occasion, and you're a happy camper in that bubble world. So there's nothing there that's going to be towards immigration reform that follows a moral compass. Our dear leader has said in the past, allegedly, that fear is power. And when you keep reading the headlines about how afraid immigrant communities are and additional communities are, that's because that's the way this leader views success. If people are afraid of our leader, then our leader is successful in being powerful. So, no prospect of immigration reform initiating from the executive branch that is going to be following a moral compass. So, what's the alternative? If Congress were functioning independently of MAGA and our dear leader, then a bill is initiated in one of the houses. It goes on, and then the other house votes on it. If they both approve it, it goes to the president's desk. I would project that our current dear leader would be disinclined to allow immigration reform that is following a moral compass. So that means Congress would have to override a presidential veto. And it takes 60% of Congress to buy into that. Now, if you're an engineer and you're designing an airplane and you design it to just meet the minimum requirements, or you're budgeting a space project and you budget it just to, spend the last nickel with your last nickel of budget and project is done, then you don't have any built-in padding for contingencies. So I would propose trying to have as an objective persuading 20% padding is the way they usually start off in an aerospace project when it was very, early in the process. So instead of 60%, 80% of Congress would have to buy into immigration reform so that by the time uh, it's all the kinks are worked out, that it can override a presidential veto in the end. Wow. So what does it take to get 80% of Congress to buy into immigration reform? It would take, let's say, what is that? Out of the 435 members of Congress, that's over 200 members. Actually, I calculated and I wrote it down someplace. So, 283 votes in the House with 10% padding, and I said 20%, so I don't even know, but around 300 votes or so in the House of Representatives supporting immigration reform, a particular bill. To get each one of those Congress representatives to actually support it, you would need constituents from that person's district actively working with that person uh, to get them to buy into it. And sure, a minimum of three people acting on each person in each district. Okay, but who are these constituents? I would say two-thirds of them should be from the same political party as their representative. You shouldn't have Republicans walking into a Democrat's office and hoping to get much of a hearing. So two-thirds, same political party. And where am I today? I have not done any outreach to any other person to go talk to my congressional representative. And if I did want to talk to my congressional representative, I would need to go round out at least two Democrats to join me to go see them. And I suppose one of my neighbors might be a Democrat. But who else? It has to be someone in the same district. And I know very few people. I've just been introverted so much of my life. So, zero progress towards a goal of enacting immigration reform. But at least you can see what my thinking is about the power of the people to make a change. It's not impossible to get 80% of Congress to buy into immigration reform. The mood of much of the nation today, energized by current leader 47, if you look at how much energy went into the No Kings protest, for example, the threshold is potentially there. What's missing are those first few steps that says, okay, national shift in values. My opinion about letters of recommendation for illegal aliens that opens up a door to where they can legally stay in the United States. Maybe every 7 years they have to go through a reevaluation. Uh, that hasn't spread to anyone else yet. Change in national values, and then organizations embracing these shift in national values, and then eventually leading to this step here of political reform. Okay, so it's a long ways away, but there is a roadmap on how to go about doing it. And there's some urgency to doing this. In a previous episode, I talked about how human beings contribute to improvement. And I've seen two articles since last week that both, in their own way, reinforce my convictions on this. One article was talking about the brain drain that happens. So, why do people immigrate from one area to another? And it's because of political and economic instability and oppression. They want to escape it, they go somewhere else. That's why people used to come to the United States. That's what the whole Statue of Liberty represented iconically. And today, we are chasing the, it's a brain drain. We're chasing away the talent that we should be inviting in to help us improve our nation. The argument that, oh, they're poisoning our blood, that's not what they do. Immigrants help build up the nation, not tear it down. And France has set up a refuge for scientists, and Canada has set up a refuge for scientists who want to flee the United States. Great Britain has set up a refuge for scientists. And they're going to benefit from the brains that are leaving here. The second article that sticks in my mind deals with how borders are springing back up throughout Europe, that people who are convinced that immigrants are poisoning our blood are now, uh, it's like when a shark tastes blood in the water, they get, oh, uh, there's a very energetic movement now worldwide towards closing off immigration, viewing all immigrants, not all, but viewing immigration as bad, that you're poisoning our blood, nation by nation. Uh, and and you're missing the true idea of human beings. We are the most sophisticated biological entities on this planet, and you should be cherishing them individually at least, right? If not collectively. So what does that mean? It means don't uh, beat someone up because you detect what characteristic they have that puts them in a group that you despise, because they are individuals, right? They're not just all clones of a particular group. Hmm. Okay, that's it. That's my thought. So, in the world of immigration reform, step five, political reform, sharing the power, zero progress to date. To get to a point where meaningful immigration reform in the United States takes place that follows a moral compass, there's hmm, a lot of work that needs to be done to get us there. Next week will be the last episode of this season. So, till then, bye.